All right guys, today we're going to put a Finbro flat top piston in this white bike. We're going to do it redneck style. Basically show you the quickest and easiest way to do this. It's not a big hard job. A lot of people are kind of scared of it, but I'm going to walk you through it. You can do this with basic hand tools. You don't really need a lot of know-how. It's a Grom. It's pretty simple. So we'll get started. All right guys, if you're lucky enough to have a 12 bar, you can just stand this sucker up and we'll be able to get to all this stuff nice and easy. Won't have to break your back. If not, you can do the exact same process on the ground. Just be aware you're going to make an oily mess. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these engine sliders off. We're going to take the header pipe loose. We're going to take the 10mm bolt here, and on the other side of the intake manifold there, we're going to take all that off. Basically get the cylinder head completely free of anything that's going to hold it on. Okay, so plugs, basically all this stuff. So we're going to take some stuff loose and we'll come back in a second. All right, so we got the header bolts off. We've got the throttle body dangling here. She's nice and loose. My boy's taking off this engine guard. Got this other side off already. So if you've got the Yoshi loop, or really I guess any exhaust, you're gonna probably need to take this loose, unless you just got one of them like Amazon kits or something that just goes straight. So we're gonna take this bolt loose. That way we can take the header pipe loose and pull it away from the head. That way we can get past those studs. Then we're going to take these plugs, get these jokers undone. Pretty simple. So once he gets this engine guard off, we're going to pull the cam cover, and we're going to pull these engine plugs because we need to make sure that the engine's going to be at top dead center. So we're going to pull that, and once we get all this stuff pulled off, I'll come back to you. All right guys, so we've got this bolt pulled out. We've got the head bolts, or the nuts I guess, pulled off these head studs. We've got these 8mm alignment studs, or whatever they're called, pulled out. Also, you're going to want to loosen up this 14mm. This is your timing chain tensioner. If you take it all the way out, that's not that big of a deal, but you really just need to loosen it up enough so that you got some threads showing, about 1/4 inch of threads or so, maybe 3/16 of an inch of threads. That just basically lets the chain have a little bit of play to it. That way you can work it back in, and you can kind of see, that's kind of funny. I don't know if you can see it, squishy down there. That's just me jiggling the chain. So yeah, well, now what we're going to do is this head is ready to come off, but instead of just popping the head off and dealing with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this chain out. I'm going to take this cam off, take the chain off, then the head's going to come off, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do as far as keeping the chain from moving. So it wouldn't be a bad idea if you got a buddy to help you with this, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. It can be done by yourself. All right, so we're fixing to pull this cam gear. First thing I'm going to do is actually break the seal on the cylinder head to the cylinder, just to kind of go ahead and get that part done. As you can see, it's jiggling around pretty good. So yeah, so the head's pretty much ready to come off. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to stick and give me a hard time. So cam gear is off. I'm going to kind of work the chain. Get your thumb under it there, kind of hold that out. So yeah, so there's your cam gear, there's your chain. Now if you're doing this with just one hand, what you're going to do is just kind of take this and lay it to the side. Then throw your pliers down. You're going to pick this bad boy up like so, and be prepared to catch it with your other hand. Okay, so I've pulled the cam chain out, let it set right there. Then then you can just take pretty much anything. I just got this little dollar magnet thing from Harbor Freight. Take it and just kind of lay it there. And basically all that does is hold the chain to the side so that it doesn't fall down into the engine. All right, we're gonna turn the handlebars just a hair, get that pulled up. Try not to scratch that fender, at least not too bad. Cut it that way. There. So our cylinder head is off. All right, now what I'm gonna do with that is basically just lay it right there. I mean, it's not gonna hurt anything. Just lay it out of the way. You're gonna have a little drippy of oil, but you should probably wash your bike more than you do anyway. So now we're going to take out this bolt here. If you can see that. We're gonna take this bolt out right here. Now that is the little idler gear thing for the cam chain. I don't know if you can see down in there. It's basically this little spinny boy here. So we're going to take that loose. That way the cylinder will come up and not hang on that. I'm pretty sure that's all we've got to do to get this cylinder off. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this out, we're going to pull this off, and we'll come back when all this is out of the way. All right guys, so we got the cylinder pulled off. There's the old piston. Now this bike's only got like what, 1,000 miles on it, something like that. So I mean, it's not bad. It's got a little bit of buildup on it. It's not bad. But the big difference is this thing's got a dome top in it or whatever, or a recess in it, I guess. So what we're going to be doing is swapping it out to this bad boy, and notice it's flat, minus the cutouts for the intake and exhaust valves. You know, that way you don't get a little tappy. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to swap this piston for this one. Now if your bike's got a bunch of miles on it, you're going to want to look at your cylinder and make sure that your cylinder is nice and slick. Like this bike here, like I said, it's got about 1,000 miles on it. That cylinder looks really good. It's looking kind of wet right now just because of the oil, which is a good thing. That's what keeps it from locking up and acting all stupid. But if it was showing a little more signs of wear, we would probably go ahead and hone it. Now we'll clean it up a little bit, maybe with some steel wool, just to get this carbon buildup off the lip up here. But other than that, this cylinder's good. So we're gonna put a new head gasket on it when we put it back on. I think that's all this thing needs. So yeah, we're gonna get the piston swapped out, and then I'll show you the process as far as like getting the cylinder slid back over the piston. When we take this piston off, we're gonna stuff a rag right in here just so these little circlips don't fall back down, and you don't want them falling down in there, because then you're making a pretty easy job really hard. If you opt to do this job with the bike laying sitting on its wheels, you're not going to really run into that issue, but you're also probably going to have a bad back. So, you know, it's whatever you're into. All right, got a different pair of pliers here, something I could hit it from a different angle. But see, that joker tried to escape. Good thing we had that rag there to keep it from going down in there. Then we're basically going to push from the opposite side and send the wrist pin out. Once the wrist pin's loose, then you can kind of hit it with some other pliers and just spin it on out. So there's our wrist pin, there's our piston completely out. All right guys, so this is our new piston. If you buy this piston kit, you're gonna be like, whoa, there's a bunch of crap here with it. Unless you've done this before or worked on anything in general. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the oil ring on. So the oil ring comes with this little, I don't know, corrugated looking thing, and then some really thin rings. So I put the corrugated part on first because it's got this little ridge on it that keeps the other oil rings from like sinking down in there too far, I guess. And this part here, it really doesn't matter the orientation of the actual rings themselves. But what you're going to want to do is once you get that corrugated part on, you're going to want to try to get the other ring. Notice how I started it on this side. You're just going to kind of work the whole thing over like so. Yeah, and then take the other one. Now, one thing I do try to do is notice the gap of this ring here. This ring, this other ring, the top part of the O-ring, I'm going to put facing the opposite direction, just to help ensure that we're getting good tight seal, maximizing our compression. And there. So now the O-rings are on. That's the lubricating bit. Now we're going to put the compression rings on. Kill it. Alright guys, so the new circlips come, they're a little bit nicer. They kind of got a little tab for you to hold on to. So what you're going to do is you'll see this little notch here. The easiest way to do it is kind of just hook that in and spin as you push it in, and you'll hear it click. So that thing's in there now. Now what we're going to do is the piston goes like this, you know, because your intake valve's on the top side. So that means that the wrist pin's got to go in on this side. So I always go ahead and put one circlip in. That way, now I've already lubricated all this stuff really good too. So make sure you use plenty of oil. Go ahead and just, I mean, you can basically dunk the piston in the oil. It's okay if it smokes a little bit on first startup. It's better to smoke a little bit on first startup than lock up down the road. So again, we're going to basically just repeat the same thing. Before I do that though, I am going to make sure that rag is covering that hole, because if something happens and I drop this little clip, it's not going to be fun to dig out of there. Okay, so both of the circlips are in. The piston's got plenty of oil on the rings, on the oil rings. So when I get ready to set this cylinder on, I'm not really too worried about which orientation the oil rings are, but if you are worried about it a little bit, you can make sure you got the bottom oil ring or the top oil ring gap coming to this side, and then the opposite side have the upper ring, or vice versa. And then your compression rings have your upper ring facing one way, kind of like this one, and then have your other ring facing opposite. So basically just make your ring gaps opposite. That seems to work pretty good. And when you're putting this in, you'll notice that the compression rings are two different colors. You'll also notice that it's like R1 and R2. I can't remember which one's which, but your lighter color ring goes to the top, your darker color ring goes to the bottom. So now we are ready to put the cylinder on, which is pretty straightforward. We're just going to kind of line up the pins here, or line up the head rods, whatever you want to call these things. And once you get down to the piston itself, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So basically you're just going to kind of take your fingers and try to compress these rings a little bit, and then apply just a little bit of pressure to the cylinder to get the rings shoved up in there. So and don't force it, because you could damage the rings, but in this case we used plenty of lube. The thing just went on nice and easy. So boom, there, the cylinder's on, the piston's on. We're gonna take and fish the timing chain back up through the timing chain hole. And the easiest way to do that is kind of have the cylinder up just a little bit. Take your little magnet. I mean, you can use your fingers, but if you got a magnet, and it makes it so much easier, just kind of fish that bad boy up through there. Keep you from dropping it. You can use a magnet. And I'm not real confident in my magnet, so I'll kind of use my fingers as well. So there, now the cylinder can go to its final home. Then we're going to take the little idler wheel, and again, you can do this with you can do this by yourself, you can do this with a friend. Either way, it's doable. And then just line that up, slide it in, line it up. Once you get it lined up, you'll kind of feel it slide in, and then you can start tightening that bolt down. You get the bolt tightened down, then we're going to be pretty much ready to slide the cylinder back on. Like I said, this is a pretty, hold that chain for me so I can get this a little faster here. It's a pretty easy job to do even by yourself. Having an extra hand just makes it that much easier. So that's on. Now we are ready for our cylinder head. So we're gonna lay the head gasket on, and we're gonna fish the chain up through it like so, and get that lined up on them little rods there. Now we are ready for the cylinder, or the cylinder head. We're gonna just try to, you know, not scratch it up too bad. We try to do that when we wreck, not when we're working on it. Okay. All right, you got it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the cylinder head's back on. Now what we're gonna do is go ahead and throw the timing gear on. At this point, it doesn't matter about the timing. We're not gonna worry about setting the timing. We just wanna make sure that the chain don't fall on us. All right, guys, we got the chain back on the gear. And if you notice, if I kind of stretch it up there, you'll see this little dimple right here. It's not lining up with this little point. That's because we didn't worry about getting the timing straight starting off. So what we're going to do now is basically turn the gear without turning the chain. So coming to this side here, basically just going to like try to skip the chain a tooth. Okay, let's see if we can do this here. Get a good grip on it and bring it up all the way around. There you go. Now see, once I get the cam lined up with the cam gear, we're basically at top dead center, which is where we want to be. So let's see if we can just pop this joker on real quick. I think we got it. So boom, there. Actually, nope, we're still a tooth off. So we're gonna pull it back off here and go one more tooth. Trying to come off of the chain on me here. There we go. Let's see how that looks. There we go. We're still at top dead center on the bottom end, looking at the timing marks, and then looking right there at that little dimple and that little notch. The engine's back at top dead center. So we're going to throw the 12mm bolt back in here that we took out. We're going to put these bolts back on. There's a specific torque spec for these. I honestly don't know it. I'm just gonna tighten them up. That's the way I did on mine. I've put several thousand miles on mine with no issues. So we're gonna put a bolt here and start buttoning everything up. All right, so we got everything buttoned up here. All these bolts are in, all them bolts. That's kind of torqued down to hand spec. Next, we're going to do this PCX 150 injector. Since we're already here, you can kind of do this without doing this piston kit. This injector is just more fuel, more better. So the throttle body is already loose. I would say that if you're doing just the injector, go ahead and just take the throttle body loose. It makes it a little bit easier. You got a 10mm, actually I think it's two 10mm holding this little apparatus down. It's kind of like the cap. This plug is for the injector. So this plug is what powers the injector. Then the fuel line's kind of right here. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but so there's two 10mm we're going to take loose, and that should get our injector free, and then we'll be able to swap. All right, so once you get this pulled out, you basically just pull this, and there's your old injector. There's the new injector. Pretty much exactly the same, but apparently this one's got a little bit bigger holes in it or something. Gives you a little more fuel. We're going to shove that back up in there, and we'll bolt it all back in. plug it up, good to go. All right guys, we got everything put back together. You can basically just do it backwards from the way you took it apart. It's pretty simple. There's the two 10 millimeters that hold this down. We took that other 10 millimeter that holds the bracket thing in place. You can see it there, that second one back there. So that injector is in, spark plug's on, we got our engine guards back on. This bike's ready to ride. So we're gonna ride it. Well, Tyler's gonna ride it, and he's gonna put some miles on it. We're probably gonna do clutch springs, or he's gonna do clutch springs tomorrow and do an oil change. So we just changed the piston in this bike without changing the oil, which is totally fine. This bike had an oil change pretty recently. Basically, we're going to use this oil as our break-in oil, and then he's going to put maybe another 100 miles on it or so, and then we're going to change the oil again, and then he'll be good to go. So the nice thing is with this piston, it gives you more compression, so you're going to get a big boost in power versus stock. I mean, you can hear it. It thumps a lot harder. Give you a lot more power to pull a heel, be able to maintain a highway speed better. So it's definitely worth the $100 upgrade and a few hours of time to put it in. If you do this on your own, you should be able to knock this out in probably about 2 hours if you've never done it. We can do it in about an hour, about 45 minutes. We did take the time to do that injector while we were in there, but that's pretty much the gist of it. If you guys got any questions, hit me up. Let me know. I'll try to help you. So yeah, we're gonna go ride.